few weeks ago, I talked about trivia's place in history and how it may have a place, though possibly marginalized, though something that maybe you should know. Trivia is kind of a tricky thing within the context of history, and well, we got to be thinking about some trivia that I know and some interesting trivia that I know. And the American presidency, I actually know a number of trivial things about American presidents, and I thought about presenting any one of those individual things in a video and trying to make a full 5 to 6 minute video like I usually do, but none of them really had the beef for that kind of video. So I thought today I will compile a number of small trivial things about American presidents and present them to you individually here. George Washington never chopped down a cherry tree and went to his father and said, "Father, I cannot tell a lie. I chopped down the cherry tree." That's silly. I mean, what child acts like that? And even little George Washington, as great a man as he might have been, was a child who acted in such a manner. No, but where the story came from is a little bit more interesting. No, Washington didn't tell the story himself. He didn't make up the story. However, those supporting for the presidency did make up the story. They thought it was a great story to show how honest General George Washington was. They considered him an extremely honest man. So why not make up this sort of fable about him, this story that shows just how honest he was, that even as a child he would go to his father and admit that he chopped down a cherry tree. So yeah, that's all that it really was a campaign story. A fable built for the mythos that was George Washington. Washington himself didn't make it up, but those who supported him did. Not a true story, but kind of an interesting one within the context. The term "okay" might have been derived from a presidential campaign. Martin Van Buren, when he ran for president in 1840, was nicknamed Old Kinderhook, and Van Buren was a bit of a mouthful, so people started to say, "Vote for OK, Old Kinderhook." And that's where he might have gotten that terminology for OK. Now, there was a joke on the other side of the opposition. Since Andrew Jackson was known for not being terribly educated or a terribly good speller, they joked he'd written OLLKORRECT all correct, and hence the positive connotation on that side is a bit of mockery, regardless that OK is all correct. Spelled wrong, of course, making fun of Jackson, but that's where OK may have come from. Now, there is a possibility that there's some other sources. Entomologists aren't exactly sure about the actual history of OK, but this is one of the possibilities that Martin Van Buren's 1840 campaign for the presidency spawned the term that we all know today as OK. Abraham Lincoln may not have only been the tallest president of the United States of America, but he might have also been the strongest. Now, subjectively, I don't know how strong each individual president was, but Abraham Lincoln was well known for his physical strength. I think most people think of him as a long, lanky person. You look at his pictures and he looks thin and frail, but no, Lincoln was actually very strong. He was known as the best wrestler in all of Illinois. Nobody wanted to take him on because he pretty much defeated all comers. There's a story about Abraham Lincoln. Towards the end of his presidency, when he was touring defeated Virginia after the Civil War, he was on this steamboat with his crew, and they were there with his wife and having kind of a good time with everybody, you know, enjoying the victory that was. Abraham Lincoln walked over to the side of the boat where they kept the fire equipment, and amongst the fire equipment was an axe, a large, thick-handled, heavy axe. He picked it up, and mind you, this is an older Abraham Lincoln towards the end of his presidency. Picked it up, held it straight out from his body, and tipped it down to his nose, touched his nose, and lifted it back up. And he put it back down on the deck and told the crew, "If any of you can do that, I will give you a $20 gold piece." Now, a lot of money in those days. $20 gold piece might have been nearly a month's wages for these crewmen. So naturally, they all took on the challenge. However, they soon discovered that very few of them could even pick up the axe and hold it out, let alone make any attempt to lower it to their nose slowly without bashing themselves right in the nose. No, Lincoln was an exceptionally strong man, even well into his old age. Something to think about. Not only was he an intellectually superior man, but he was also a physically superior man. The shortest president ever was James Madison at 5'3". However, William McKinley was also 5'3", but it's estimated that he was just slightly taller than James Madison. That's all I have to say about that. They were the shortest. The name we know a president by might not always be the name that he was actually given at birth. Take Ulysses S. Grant. Now, because of a mistake when he was being put into West Point, he was given the name Ulysses S. Grant. That wasn't his actual name. His real name was Hiram Ulysses Grant. However, when he was being sent to West Point, the representative or senator who was putting down his name didn't know his full name. He only knew it was Ulysses Grant. And so when he went to give the boy a middle initial, which he was actually Ulysses, he went with his mother's maiden name, which was Simpson. So Ulysses Simpson Grant became his name thanks to his West Point admittance. But in reality, his birth name was Hiram Ulysses Grant, something he wouldn't go by for the rest of his life. And the U.S. served very well when he was a general, unconditional surrender, and running for president of the U.S. as U.S. Grant. Also in turn, Woodrow Wilson's name was not Woodrow Wilson. It was Thomas Woodrow Wilson. But he shared a first name with his father. He wasn't actually a junior. They had different middle names, and so he simply went by his middle name. If his name had been Thomas Wilson, maybe he's a little bit more forgettable, but the name Woodrow, a little harder to forget. So luckily, Thomas Woodrow Wilson went by Woodrow Wilson, and that's how people know him today. One more, Harry S. Truman. The S stood for nothing. Harry Truman had no middle name other than the S. So when his name is written properly, it's Harry S. No point Truman. Since S is the entirety of his middle name, it doesn't need the dot to indicate an initial like it would for most people's middle names. In my instance, mark D. I need a D after that because it stands for something. But in Harry's instance, it stands for nothing, so there's no dot after the S. A little interesting fact about names of presidents. Here we go. Ronald Reagan was a B-movie actor. Wait, everybody already knew that. Huh. Oh, well, I seem to be out of interesting little anecdotes about presidents for today. Do you have a favorite anecdote? Go ahead and contribute them in the comments below. Maybe I'll do a future episode like this, because actually I do have little anecdotes about presidents. These are the ones I just chose to share for today. So, hey, thanks for listening. I hope that gave you just a little bit of historical perspective.